Sermonette.
I could do it. I could do it. No. Kevin James, Sparta, Bowling Green District. One piece of the puzzle that I just think is significant, and member and run the calls and stuff. Anyway, I'll use up my time. I think a piece that we want to be sure gets included on why at least the people in Sparta feel like this is a priority is one that's a priority of y'all as well too. It's the public safety piece that the facility can provide. The only other structure in Sparta that could house anybody in the event of hurricane, another ice storm, all those things we've been through would be our church. And to be honest, we don't have a generator. We can't feed them. We can't keep them warm. We don't have that capability. When it floods, not if, when it floods, there isn't any way for anybody else in the county really to get to us on the other side of the creek. I live on the Bowling Green side. I can come up here and stay warm, be fed, all that. But everybody who lives out the other way, this is a part of our disaster relief plan too, I think. And that would be a service that we need to provide. I know that's the local government's concern as well as it is ours out that way. I know Remuda has approached our church to be that kind of facility for them because they had to have some plan for somebody as an evacuation. I said, hey, that's great, but if the lights go out, you're going to have a safe place, but you're going to be in the dark and cold. So I just put that in the hopper, too, that a part of this is not just to provide for the fire department to get us up out of the bottom. It'd be a shame to have that $500,000 fire truck be full of fish and water and mud because it didn't get up out of the bottom before the water rose, which is what would happen. It's been this high before, it'll be that high again. But I think to provide that kind of opportunity to take care of our citizens in the event there is a problem, that this building could provide. And last thing, I'll leave. I'd love for the opportunity for Sparta to teach us as a community how to be community again. And this would be like an old-time barn raising. It would all be to code. It would all be, we got the inspector who lives, he'd be checking on it every day on his way to work. But I think it'd be really cool to say to Caroline, look what we can do when we work together as Caroline County. We don't want $3.3 million, and we don't want a $3.3 million building. But we want the opportunity for our community to come together to provide for our folk what we need and say the rest, hey, man, if we all do this, it saves you gobs of money, and you can do it to spend on everything else because last I heard, things are tight. And I think that'd be a cool thing. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Any other citizens who would like to address the board? State your name and voting district.
I'm Maynard Penny. I'm from Bowling Green District, and, well, it depends on at the time, but Sparta. I was chief at Sparta close to 50 years ago, so I've been around for a while. I've seen the water in the firehouse waist high. We haven't seen it like that this year, but I would, when I know Doug Terry, the chief down there, when he does something for the fire department, he pinches pennies just like it was for himself, and he's tight. And so he's not going to go at you and blow money. When it comes time, I would like to see that department be put there. He will know, and the other guys down there will. I've preached to you a little bit before about saving money. Doug will save you money. Today we can't afford to spend money we don't have. We're getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. And we got to figure a way out of it. I'd like to have the fire department, I'd like to have the library, I'd like to have these other things, but right now, we just simply don't have the money. We're very deeply in debt in this county, in this nation. So I ask you all to be careful what you do, be responsible, and show us a way out when you go in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Penny. Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board? Are there any citizens who would like to address the board? And if there's anyone else who would like to address the board, please come, if you would just stand in line, that would help us if you could do that.
I don't see a whole lot there, but good evening.
Good evening.
Glad to be here to address the board and just share with you some concerns that I have that I think I'll echo a little bit of what Mr. Penny had to say, and that is I know that financially we have borrowed a lot of money, and this is not the first time I've been to the board. I've been to the last couple of budget sessions and talked about that and shared my concerns. And I know, sir?
Just for the record, you have to say
State your name.
I'm sorry, Les Stanley, Bowling Green District. I apologize. And I guess my concern is I know we've got McKeeson coming. I think that's a great thing, and I'm wonderful at that, but I know we've got to spend a little money to do some improvements where they are and everything. And of course, we just had our employees, if they made over $40,000, I think they got like a 2% cut. I think if they made less than that, they got a 1% cut. And that's a considerable sum of money. And these are very dedicated, hardworking people for the county. And, you know, I would like to see something done there. I look at Bowling Green Primary and Bowling Green Elementary, and I mentioned that at our budget session back, I think it was in April. Again, both of those are very old buildings. There's a lot that needs to be done there. And it might be something that you want to consider. The Sparta Fire Department definitely is a huge need. So it might be something that, you know, you want to appoint some community people to a committee, and they would sit and look at priorities with you and work with you and say, what are some things we need here in Caroline County, and what can we do to get those? Where's the funding for that? And, you know, come up with a real plan. And I think if you have a good comprehensive plan that kind of looks at all of these wants and needs, and I think needs are what we really need to really focus on, that would be a really good thing. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
Lawrence Johnson and the Bowling Green District, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board. As a taxpaying member of Caroline County, I wish to voice my opinion and say that I think that the construction of a firehouse in the Sparta area should be #1 priority. Naturally, we look at personal safety during times of extreme need, person's house catches on fire or something like that, and that's where, you know, that's where the volunteers come in, and that's the job that we're training these young men of tomorrow to be. And like I say, the priority on my side is #1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there others who would like to address the board? Any other citizens who would like to address the board in any matter? Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on any matter? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment period. And certainly we hear from the folks in Sparta, and we have been in communication with the chief and the president and different ones over the years and months, and we'll continue to you know, open that dialogue. So we'll look forward to that. You guys working with the chief, and chief, you probably need to Chief Lehman, need to make sure we get our policies and guidelines that we've worked on before with the volunteer agencies, with a county building and how that was established, and work through the processes of those that we have before. I know there's some guidelines that we have put together, and because this would be the first time, you know, that we would build a firehouse basically by the county. It'd be the first time that taxpayer dollars would pay for a building. So it's a new step, but it's certainly a noble one. So we'll, you know, we'll work on that process, Chief. Both chiefs, District Chief and Chief Lehman. Okay, I think it addresses all the points that were brought up. Next, we do have a public hearing this evening. We have a public hearing for RZ 01-2009, R207 LLC owner, applicant. And Mr. Fincham, are you going to make the presentation this evening?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your first public hearing tonight is RZ 01-2009, R207 LLC owner, Alan Shia applicant. They're requesting a rezoning from rural preservation with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres of land to M1 industrial with no specified density on tax map 82-A-121, 122A, and a portion of 122, containing approximately 81.78 acres of land. The property is located on the east side of Route 652, Ruther Glen Road, approximately 1/4 mile south of Route 207 in the Mattaponi voting district. The proposed use is industrial, 2030 comprehensive plan identifies the property as being located in a Carmel Church community planning area and designated as office industrial with no specified density. The comprehensive plan discussion for this area of the Carmel Church community plan states, the area south of Route 207 and north of the CSX railroad tracks is designated as planned industrial area. While all types of industrial development are needed, heavier industrial uses should be located to the center of the area along the CSX tracks, and lighter uses should act as a transition to the rural areas and to the more intensive industrial zoning. The subject property is split by the Route 652 relocation on the south side of Route 207. The project has been identified in the county's plan since the early 90s. This improvement was designed to address level of service issues at the existing Route 207 and 652 intersection. The front portion of the subject property is situated within the Highway Corridor Overlay District and subject to the access standards of that district. The application for the rezoning was filed on February 12, 2008, and a traffic impact analysis prepared based upon a mix of commercial and industrial uses. The TIA indicated a significant deterioration in the level of service for the road network, which included the newly constructed Route 652, and the plan was subsequently modified to eliminate the commercial development included with the original TIA. Since that filing, the ensuing period of time has been spent attempting to resolve issues between the applicant's desire for flexibility, the stated goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, and the transportation issues that were identified. For example, the VDOT analysis of the TIA assigns trip generations based upon the size and type of proposed land uses. Trip generations could be quantified based upon the elimination of certain uses or limitations on the amount or size of structures and different land uses, which conflicts with the applicant's desire for flexibility. The applicant has recently agreed to proffer the level of service C, which addresses many of the concerns about the types of uses. There's also been significant discussion about the need for and the location of interparcel access between Route 652 and the Carmel Church Business Center, which originally was proposed through the rear of the parcels fronting on Rogers Clark Boulevard. The location and number of access points to Route 652, as well as how to accommodate future improvements to Route 652. The Planning Commission held its public hearing on this request at its June 16, 2010 meeting. One person spoke at the public hearing and expressed concerns about the buffers to their place of residence and the impacts to a private well serving the property. The Commission held a work session on July 7, 2010, in which the application was further discussed. And the Commission members expressed several concerns, including number of entrances onto Route 652 and the lack of a development plan for the property. The Planning Commission further considered this request at its July 21, 2010 meeting and forwarded a recommendation to the board without any further discussion. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, Mr. Fincham, thank you for your review. Does the applicant want to make comments before the public hearing?
Hello, my name's Alan Shia, and thank you very much for this opportunity to I'm going to do a brief comment, and hopefully maybe afterwards I can answer some more questions. My brief comment is, you know, we recently did the Stonewall deal, and, you know, I thank you guys for your effort to help allow that to occur in this county, and it's a win-win for all of us. But to go back in history, 2 years ago when maybe almost 3 years ago when they initially approached us, and we didn't had any idea, the number one question was, is the property zoned? And that's always been the question, the first question they ask, is the property zoned? Is the property zoned? Businesses right now, it's a buyer's market. And there's plenty other places they can go that has zoned property ready for them to go. We told them we were ready, shovel ready, we were zoned. That made them happy. And we, further discussion, we became number one on the list, and then finally, as we all know, the deal finally closed, and so it's a win-win. We've got, because of them being there, we've built some kind of energy in that location. And so now I'm getting that same question from other prospects. Is the property zoned? That's the first question they're asking. If it's not, we can go here, we can go there. I mean, there's a lot of other places they can go. So that's why we're here. We've worked with the Planning Commission. They've worked with us. We've had very great conversation, and I think we're at that point where I think that we can, keep our flexibility at the same time, keep the issues that you guys are concerned about. So, thank you.
All right, sir. All right, board members have questions of staff or the applicant before we get started. Mr. Popowitz?
Have none.
Mr. Akers?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Seeley?
Not at this time.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman?
Yeah, I'm going to ask mine now.
Okay.
Mr. Fincham, and I'll ask Mr. Fincham, so they're staff questions, and if the applicant can have a chance to address them. The discussion of the buffer that was mentioned in your report with regard to the well, was that satisfied, or was that addressed?
That's covered under the county zoning regulations, yes, sir.
Okay, so it's covered not under anything the applicant did, but under the normal county
Yes, sir.
regulations, okay. I didn't see in my packet, and maybe I missed it, was there a conceptual site plan?
There is a plan that shows the properties that are subject to the rezoning.
Right.
I would say there's not a conceptual site plan that's consistent with what the board generally requests or evaluates in terms of a plan of development.
In a normal, right, in a normal application, even though you're asking for rezoning, you may have 2 or 3 prospects that are tentative. We would normally see what would look like the overall final product. It may change here or there, but we would see something of that nature. And that's why I questioned, I didn't see that. And I guess for the applicant, don't tell me anything you don't want the rest of the world to know, because the rest of the world is here. But do you have a prospect for this site? And the reason I ask you if you have a prospect is, and I'm sure you know, right across the street, there's a great deal of land that's been cleared and sat for years. Further up on Route 1, we've got some buildings that have been created, and there's no tenants for those. So I'm just wondering if you got a prospect. Don't tell us who it is, but do you have a prospect that's close that might say yes? Or if you have a prospect that would say, if the land was rezoned, I'll move here?
I'm John Schwartz, Managing Director of Half Site Will Travel. We're a commercial brokerage and consulting firm with about 30-plus years of experience, and it's been my responsibility primarily to market this property at the county in our efforts to bring companies here. McKesson started about 3.5, 4 years ago in a very private discussion with some consultants out of the Midwest. None of us, including you, nor Gary, or any of us knew who it was. But the key element for them was, are you shovel ready? And that's become the Bible of my industry. And one of the key things that you run into is that you and me and Gary and anybody even at downtown at the state of Virginia, we don't necessarily know that we've been bypassed by a company because everything's electronic. So if I'm sending information, which I do at the rate of about 30,000 emails a month on properties that we represent, and this one primarily is our #1 property, companies look at it all over the world, and they go to the internet, and they say, well, that property's owned? And they go right to your information that's published, and they say, well, that's not zoned, and what's the next one? So you don't know, and I don't know. So the key element is shovel ready. And the #1 thing in that shovel ready definition is zoning and entitlements. They have to have that. Roads, utilities, those types of things, an aggressive, very supportive county as y'all have been, a great economic development department that really works hard. That's important, but that shovel-ready thing is critical. We right now have at least 4 prospects, and that's the question that I can't give them an honest answer on. 3 of the prospects are almost the same size as the McKesson deal. That's 150 to 200 jobs times 3 if we were to get all 3 of them. To be realistic with you, I don't think we could put all 3 of them on the site, but I know we can put 2 of them there. We have another one that's about 100,000 feet. It's probably 75 jobs, I believe. We would like to be able to say to them, we can deliver it. The road's almost open. R207 LLC has spent the money to make sure the utilities are in place. We've been very aggressive in the development that we've done at their expense to make sure we're ready. Zoning's the thing that's sitting out there that I can't tell them we're ready to go. And they've heard about the McKesson deal. That deal's all over the country, if not all over the world. And we're hearing from people who want to be where they are. And that's what's happening out there. And these companies are great tax generators, great employee generators, and excellent citizens. And they're all fit that Fortune 500 globe. Actually, McKesson's Fortune 14. The rest of these companies are probably in the top 250. I hope that answers that question. I can't tell you who they are for the same reason we couldn't tell you who McKesson was.
I didn't want you to tell me who you were.
And you knew I wasn't going to tell you.
All I wanted was, I have a prospect who's willing to sign an MOU if the land is zoned.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you're saying yes, you do?
We have prospects of that nature, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm happy to try to answer.
That was all I had, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Fincham,
Bless you.
just one question. On the map that we have, the map here that has 2 words sites on them,
Yes, sir.
site. The blue around them is already zoned.
Yes, sir. The
Correct.
blue is zoned industrial, red areas are zoned B1 business.
All right. So on primarily on each side of these sites, it's already industrial.
Yes, sir. If you recall, much of this property was formerly owned by Ashton Taylor.
Correct.
Mr. Taylor, much of the land was actually already zoned industrial. Mr. Taylor rezoned or requested the board rezone some of this property back to rural preservation some years back. A portion of this was previously zoned back to M1 as part of the Value City project. And this is the residue of Mr. Taylor's holdings that have not been zoned back to M1.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we go to public hearing? Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chairman.
I'm getting ready to use my quota question. So, compared to proffers, Mr. Fincham, does this compare with some of the recent projects the county's been involved in? Say the Carmel Church rail station project, and that was a big industrial project. They got rezoned. There was a lot of things they offered. Simple yes or no, more or less?
There are some differences between this project and Carmel Church Station, for example. I mean, one, obviously Carmel Church Station is more mixed use. It does have an industrial and office component. This project, for example, a new road is being constructed by VDOT at the board's request, which basically opens up this property and provides access to it that would not have otherwise been available unless the applicant constructed that road in accordance with our comprehensive plan. So the applicant, in part, has been relieved of a physical improvement that otherwise would have been required to be consistent with this plan. So therefore, the applicant has not had to make any improvements that might otherwise have been required. And Carmel Church Station, for example, there are some improvements proffered. There are some, there's a cash proffer for office and industrial development, for transportation improvements, things like that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I won't ask any more.
Okay.
I think Mr. Fincham left out the biggest part about Common Church Station versus this particular project here. Common Church Station also had 8,000 homes, 8,000 dwellings involved in that, whereas this is strictly industrial property. So
Yes,
I
sir.
think that is a reason, that's one of the reasons that I think it's entirely different. The two are not anywhere in the same ballpark.
Yes, sir.
Or
Carmel
project.
Church Station was a mixed use. Yes, sir. That's correct.
And the largest part of it being houses or dwellings.
Yes, sir. There's also 3.1 million square feet potentially of office and industrial.
I heard that when Haymal came in place too.
Okay,
He did say that, though.
well now,
He did say there was that.
we'll hold a public meeting for RZ01 2009, R207 LLC owner, Alan Shara, applicant. Any citizen would like to address the board on this public hearing? Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing? Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on this rezoning? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Board members wish to discuss how you like to proceed. Questions for Mr. Popowitz? This is in the Mackinac voting district. Mr. Popowitz, have additional questions?
I have no additional questions, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, the only
Mr.
question I
Akers?
have has to do with the comments from the departments. And some of the department heads, in fact, one in particular said he was not in favor of this project. But these are dated 2008. Did we send back around to the department heads and all the people of interest as to get new comments from them after improvements have been made at the Common Church area?
Mr. Fincham?
Mr. Chair, yeah, no, I see what you're saying. We did not send the report back to the different departments and agencies. The predominant issue, is my understanding from Mr. Lippa or Sheriff Lippa, was the transportation, the impacts to Route 207.
That's what it says here.
I will tell you, in terms of their willingness to proffer the level of service C, addresses a number of the concerns that I think we all had about the potential impacts to the street network within that area. If you remember my original comment, the original TIA, the numbers were huge and resulted in a significant reduction in the overall level of service. The applicant's willingness to proffer that level of service, I think, restricts the number of use and intensity of uses that could go into that site, thereby addressing most of those transportation concerns.
My only comment to that would be that I would like to, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, someone question as to why we rezoned, made this rezoning, if it gets rezoned, why we approved this rezoning if we had a non-favorable response from some of the department heads, and especially the sheriff of the county, as to concerns. I would hope that, maybe too late now, but in the future, we will make sure that we have updated comments from the various departments as to what, especially not have 2-year-old comments.
Yeah.
come
And
to
if,
board for
if the
rezoning.
board does not act on this tonight, I can certainly get those updated.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Fincham.
I have one
Mr.
question, Mr. Fincham. And I guess I'm just a little leery of some of the caveats. It says the applicant shall limit the number of commercial entrances onto Route 652 based on the TIA and VDOT and Caroline County standards. If additional entrances demonstrate improvements to the area, the level of service on Route 652 and meet VDOT minimum standards, the additional entrances may be allowed. And I guess I just, every time I see that, I'm sort of like, okay, additional if. Are we going to put a line in the sand, an entrance, And I guess that goes back to Mr. Thomas's site plan, to give us some idea what we're dealing with, because we're looking at the drawing, you know, we're looking at 88 acres, 89 acres, whatever it is, without any real concept of what that impact could be or what that will be. And I guess that's my question, and is there any way around this, or is there a way to make it so that there is one entrance, a road does get constructed, they're talking about one or more facilities there, and you wouldn't want an entrance for every facility?
Yes, Mr. Seeley, the board certainly has the ability to make that request of the applicant. So yes, there is that opportunity to visit that issue. Now's the time to do that.
That was my question, Mr. Chairman, and I guess that's sort of where I'd like to nail that down, since in the future it will be an issue that won't go away.
Okay. Mr. Vice Chair? Okay, and I guess my only question that's left still is around the development plan. You know, and how we're going to approach that in the future with these property. And, you know, I know I can envision what we did, and, you know, the property at Lady Smith, where we have flex buildings and things like this, but this is much more heavier use. You know, you have industrial, you know, mixed in here and all. So, you know, I guess still we get a little more understanding about how we're going to, you know, how this thing's going to lay out. Okay. You know, get some ideas in general.
Okay.
But all in all, I mean, it certainly has a, you know, a lot of the industrial all the way around it. And I guess I would question why the planning commission, you know, they felt like, you know, they had the same question, but they still sent it forward with a favorable result.
Yes, sir. I think they shared some of those concerns. I think they felt that ultimately this was going to be a policy decision of the board.
Okay. All right. Mr. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the applicant, I know a little bit about body language, and I just wanted to tell you that from what we've been saying, I've been watching you, and it's not as bad as you think, okay? I'm personally leaning towards approving your project. I think it's a good project. You talk about bringing 150, 300 possibly jobs to the county. We're definitely in your corner if you can make that happen. The only thing we have, or the only thing that I have, is, you know, a couple of extra questions that I think we need to clarify, and hopefully that won't delay you too long. One is, I think it's really not something you can do right now, but one is I think we do need to address the concerns Mr. Aker has, Mr. Fincham, if we can update at least the sheriff's report just to see what his procedure is now, or what his opinion is now. Because I'd hate to have somebody use that to say, you know, you approved something and you know it wasn't based on old data. And then I think the last thing we really need to work on is the actual site plan, not necessarily where the buildings are going to go, but where the entrances are going to go. And, you know, I think we can work through those. It's nothing serious. Again, I like your project. I'd just like to fine-tune a little bit. Then, of course, we met and talked about this project several months ago. Mr. Fincham and I toured the project a couple of weeks ago. We never talked about proffers, hint, hint. So if we could delay it, I think our meeting in September was the 14th. So if you want to tell your prospects that in all likelihood the county will approve it on September 14th, but we're just working through a couple of details, that would be good on your part. But I think there are some questions that the board has that if you'll let us work through those, then I think we'll both have a successful project that we both want. So hopefully that's not a problem. That's not a problem, is it?
We've told them once.
Okay. But you know, your body language really improved just then, so I think you like that idea, don't you?
Well, if I can only speak on behalf of
Sure.
my friends here a little bit, I mean, I think if we could move forward but agree that those items are out there for your approval when the plan comes. I mean, it's like trying to put the cart before the horse. And in the case of McKesson, we'd have never gotten here. They wouldn't be here today if that property wasn't zoned. And I think the issue here is that we will agree to address those things. And frankly, we have addressed this road issue with Mr. Fincham on some of the prospects that have come in here. And if you would have seen, and if you have it with you, I don't know if you do, the multiple sites that McKesson looked at on this property before they chose the one they did, and they didn't because it wasn't zoned.
Right.
One of the reasons, and there were some others, but that was one of the issues, and we dealt with that interparcel, inside the parcel road plan. So it's been out there, it's been in planning, it's been floated around. I do believe, Mr. Thomas, maybe you, Mr. Rozelle, saw it in one of those drawings. I don't know that. I know there's a lot of drawings we've looked at, which are all over the 6 months or 2 years we've been doing this, but so that's out there. And I would say that R207 would agree to accommodate you on all those items at that time, but I'd hate to delay it and have to go back to at least 2 of these prospects and say, well, we got to wait another month. There's some CEO sitting somewhere, or a CFO saying, what are they doing down there?
Well,
I mean, and that's what scares me.
Yeah,
I can't answer your question.
And I really understand that.
And I think we've delivered a quality project and would do that under the stipulation that you get another bite of that apple when the POD comes forward as well. And I think the Planning Commission has another chance to do that. As far as Sheriff Lippa, we'll just talk to him. I mean, I didn't realize we had a problem there.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna definitely take action. You know, in the first meeting in September. We don't meet again in the month of August, so our next meeting is actually the first meeting in September. Let us work on some things on our side. Again, in my opinion, the board in all likelihood will approve your project at their next board meeting.
I'll quote you on that to these guys.
I repeated it slowly so she could write it down if she wanted
Send me
to,
that in writing,
and you could have it. In all likelihood, the board will approve your project at its next meeting.
No comment.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rozelle, I'd make a motion that if possible, or I'd make a motion that we defer the final decision on R207 to September 14th.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Popowitz. Then we defer to our next meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same. All right, motion carries. All right, next item, item 6. We had the proposed amendment for Chapter 103, Article 5 of the Code of Caroline County to establish a permanent county decal. Mr. Parton.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to consider amendment to the county code to phase out the requirement to purchase a vehicle license tax or county sticker on an annual basis in favor of a permanent decal. Under the proposed ordinance, the treasurer would begin selling permanent licenses in early 2011. And once a permanent decal has been obtained, citizens would not have to purchase another decal for as long as they own the vehicle. Citizens who purchase a new or used vehicle after 2011 would be required to file with the Commissioner of the Revenue's office and purchase a permanent license for that vehicle within 10 days of the date of the purchase. New residents would be required to purchase a permanent license within 30 days of moving into Caroline County. Beginning in 2012, the owner of a vehicle for which a permanent decal has already been purchased would be assessed an annual registration fee by the Commissioner, which would be equivalent to the cost of the decal. And this fee, which would be added to the first half personal property tax bill that's due June 5th, would replace the revenue that we receive from the annual vehicle license tax. The ordinance also proposes the following changes. The number of, and we've talked about this before, the number of fee classifications would be reduced from 21 to 2. Decals would only be required for motor vehicles and motorcycles and similar two-wheel vehicles. Decals would no longer be required for trailers. semi-trailers, and that includes campers. The proposed fee is $30 for all motor vehicles